Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to focus on the topic of quite a few comments that I tend to get on my channel, which are mostly from high school students asking me about what things that they can do to get into university programs to study archaeology. Besides the fact that you're going to have a basic high school diploma or equivalent in order to qualify to get to university. A lot of students and teenagers seem to be quite stressed out about this topic because clearly this is something they feel passionately about and they want to study it. They want to study it at the program that they want to get into. While I wouldn't recommend that you don't work hard and put the effort in to make sure that you're getting into the program that you want, I also wouldn't stress as much about it as you perhaps are. We are living in a time where people are the highest educated they've ever been. Universities run a model of being a business where they are dependent upon your tuition to keep running. This has in turn led to massive expansion of universities. And while I wouldn't say that it necessarily makes it easy to get into a university, I would say that it's probably easier than it's been in the past. So in an effort to kind of give students a bit of an idea of what kind of things you should be doing or what's going to be expected of you to get accepted to an archaeology program at a university, we're going to look at the requirements for 3 different programs at 3 different schools in the UK, the US, and Canada. But if you have a particular program in mind or a particular school in mind, I would always just recommend Googling that school and finding the entry requirements for that university, even contacting the university, seeing what kind of things they recommend you do to assist you in getting accepted to their program, and visiting open days and speaking to staff and getting to know what it is that you're getting into. I already have a video about how to pick what school you want to go to. If you're trying to decide where you want to go and what you want to study, please check that out. Every university also has different requirements to get in. Some are a lot harder to get into, some are not as hard to get into. And if you applied for but didn't get into a Ivy League or Russell Group or top rated program, that doesn't mean that you can't still get a good education somewhere else. For example, my undergraduate at Wilfrid Laurier University, we are the 1,180th ranked university in the world. We're ranked 6th in Canada by Maclean's, which is a famous Canadian magazine that ranks all of our universities, and we're a 201 to 300 rank by the Times Higher Education list. So while we're a good university, we're certainly not the top university in Canada, the world, etc. And I still managed to get a good education, go on to a master's at the University of Edinburgh. So just because you didn't get into that top school doesn't mean that you shot yourself in the foot for the rest of your career. I also want to emphasize that just because I'm talking about these certain schools in this video, it does not mean that I recommend any of these schools and that you should absolutely be trying to get into these schools in particular. I'm not being paid by any of these schools to talk about this, and I only have experience of going to really one of them. And even that one, it's been about 10 years since I went to school there, so things will have changed, so I can't necessarily say that it's going to be exactly the same. And the first university that we're going to look at today is from the UK. It's the University of Oxford. Depending on what list you look at, they are either the top rated or second place top rated archaeology program in the UK and the world. So obviously they are also going to have very high requirements to get into their program. Now, I just did a bit of a skim of their entry requirements. I didn't do too much of an in-depth analysis. If you really want to know what it takes to get accepted to Oxford, you should contact them or a former student and see what they did that they think helped them get accepted to the program. The basic requirements are AAA level or equivalent grades. You also have to submit several examples of your recently written works. So you have 2 essays that were written on preferably different subjects within a 2-week period. You also have to submit a 500-word essay about people, past or present, and what we can learn about them from their material culture. You will need academic references, so teachers or tutors. You also need to have a history of academic excellence in things like your GCSEs or exams. Now, it does not specify that you need to have that in any specific subject. However, I think there is an emphasis on anything related to arts or the sciences. And you will need to write a personal statement about you know, why you want to go to Oxford, why it's important for you to get into the program. Now, this is just the basic application process. After that, if that all gets accepted, you will also get interviewed before you get offered a place at their program. And this interview, they're not going to be necessarily looking for you to like memorize facts or recite to them the entire history of ancient Egypt. Specifically, they're looking for you to have an ability to think independently, potential, motivation, an interest or passion in archaeology. They're looking at the way that you think through problems. They're actually looking more at your personality and who you are as a person. As the top program in the UK and one of the top universities in the world, they are very particular about who they let in. And this is reflected in the fact that they only have a 22% acceptance rate. So that's 22% of people that apply and make it through the interview process are actually offered a place at Oxford University. Just to contrast this, I looked at the undergraduate archaeology program at the University of Edinburgh just to see what the differences are between the two programs in the UK. And at Edinburgh, you still need, I think, A levels, but instead of having to be AAA, it's ABB, or the Scottish equivalent of ABBB. I don't really know much about the UK school system, so apologies if I'm being a bit confusing. For the University of Edinburgh, you also need to have a GCSE English at C or 4 level, and you'll also need to write a personal statement and provide academic references. In contrast to Oxford, the acceptance rate at Edinburgh is actually 46%, and they are still quite a prestigious university because they're part of the Russell Group here in the UK, but obviously they have a much higher acceptance rate, and as you can see, their process for applications is a lot less intense. A good example of a school that is good and has a good reputation to go to. The next school that we're going to talk about is in the US, and this is Brown University. I chose this because I actually looked into going to Brown University for my undergrad, maybe my master's. It was one of the two, and because they have a well-known Archaeology Institute program, one of their digs that they do, or at least used to do, was in Petra in Jordan, and they're generally a well-regarded school for archaeology. That being said, they are also extremely particular about who they let in. They're even more but this is more them as a university rather than their particular program, but they have an 8.3% acceptance rate. So you have to work, I think, a lot harder to get into that university. Now, it was a bit difficult to find out what exactly they were looking for in terms of your levels of your grades because they don't release that, which seems to be a bit of a trend at US universities. But I did a bit of extra research on the internet, and it seems like the SAT scores that they are looking for are between 690 and 790 for the math SAT and 680 to 780 for the reading SAT. Now, I haven't taken the SATs, I don't live in the US, I don't know if that is a ridiculously high number or a middle number, but apparently one of the reasons why they don't actually publish what they look for is because those aren't necessarily a cutoff. I think they try and look a lot more at the person applying. So even if you maybe have a slightly lower SAT score than what they're looking for, but the rest of your application is absolutely stellar, then they might make an exception for you. So don't necessarily think that that is going to eliminate you from consideration if you don't have those scores. Similar to the other two university programs we looked at before, they want counselor and teacher recommendations to say that you are suited and will be a good asset to this program. They want a graded paper from a humanities and social studies class, so obviously submit a paper that you did well on. Similar to Oxford, they have you write a bunch of supplementary work, so these are called supplementary essays that you will be asked to answer 3 different questions in essay format to give to them. The first question is, what is your academic interest? The second one is, how will you contribute to the Brown community? And the third one is, tell us about home and how your home has shaped your perspective in life. So clearly, again, they are looking at you as a person and not just your academic and school qualifications and your grades. They also ask you for a more universal essay, which I assume will cover why you want to go to Brown and not somewhere else, but I didn't find that specific question anywhere. I don't actually know. So similar to the University of Oxford, this is a difficult program to get into, and if you are really passionate about getting into it, definitely more than just listening to me on YouTube. You should be contacting the school, contacting graduates from the program or people that are enrolled in the program and asking them for tips or things that can help you out. I'm sure that all these schools will have resources. They want people to come to their university. For Canada, surprise, surprise, the university we're going to talk about is Wilfrid Laurier University, which is where I did my degree. It is a top 10 university in Canada. I would also say from personal experience that their archaeology program is one of the best ones in Canada, and I think it's actually the only one that explicitly requires you to go on a field school as a part of your degree. It's not just optional, it's actually a required course credit. And I also know that they are very strict about what they consider to be a field school. It can't just be 2 weeks. It has to be at least 6 weeks long with at least 4 weeks of dedicated field work. All the provinces in Canada have different school systems. It's not necessarily universal, and we don't have a test like the SAT that everybody takes and universities can just base their entrance requirements off of that. So I'm just gonna go off the Ontario curriculum. You need to be taking 6 4U or 4M level courses in your last year. 4U, I think the U stands for university, and M is university college level courses. So you have to be taking 6 of those, and your minimum average between those courses needs to be in the low 70s or higher. One of those courses needs to be 4U English, which you need to pass at 60% or higher for your grade. Now, they also have on their website what they call a competitive average. So this is accumulated from all of the students who were accepted to the program and came and studied there last year. So what the latest batch of people, what their averages were going into the university were. So the competitive average is the low 80s. So this means that while the minimum to get into Laurier and the archaeology program specifically is the low 70s, you should probably be aiming for the low 80s if you really want to guarantee that you're going to get accepted. So in addition to your required averages and courses, you can also add an applicant background summary to kind of bolster your application, to maybe explain why circumstances means maybe you didn't get as good of a grade, or why you're really suited to this program, etc. But again, you should contact the school to see if that's something that they're really looking for before you go through the effort of making it. So those are the 3/4 universities that we've kind of looked at their requirements to just give you a kind of idea of things that people are looking for. Higher ranking schools are going to have more stringent requirements to get into them. I also want to stress that you should be applying for more than one school. I applied for 3 universities when I went to my undergrad, which were Laurier, Waterloo, and Western, I believe. And then for my master's, I also applied for 3 schools that I remember, which were Exeter, Leicester, and Edinburgh, with Edinburgh being my top choice. If you are feeling very nervous and you don't really know where to start or what to do, visit your guidance counselor at your school. They are there to help with this kind of thing, to help you figure out what your plans are. At least for me, the first 2 years of high school don't really count, and it's the last 2 that you start to get judged on for your university. So if you want to start visiting your guidance counselor when you're entering the last 2 years of your school so that you can pick courses and make sure that you're on track to be able to get into the program that you want, that's something that I would definitely recommend you do. A lot of people ask me what kind of courses they can take to bolster their application. But as you can see, when we looked at all of these programs, including the top archaeology program in the world, but they're not expecting you to necessarily come in already with a foundation for their program in terms of like history or heritage courses. So I wouldn't necessarily stress about making sure that you're taking the exact right course. I know for my particular school, I took every history class that I possibly could. So I took so many classes on Canadian history. I took one on ancient civilizations. I took one on world religions. I also took quite a lot of extra English courses. So I took one that was about fantasy and sci-fi literature. Most of that was just due to my interest, and I don't think that any of them particularly helped me get into my university. I don't think the specific courses were actually looked at. My grades were looked at. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about making sure that you're taking any courses outside of what's already required. That being said, English and history courses are always good things to take, especially if you're looking at archaeology. You're going to be looking at history and you're going to be writing about it. That's a lot of the bulk of what a generic archaeology degree tends to be. If you're interested in the more sciencey part of archaeology, so things like maybe radiocarbon and isotope dating, perhaps take some chemistry and physics classes, because those will be applied at some point when you're working in a laboratory looking at radiocarbon dates. If you are interested in osteoarchaeology, perhaps taking biology or anatomy courses will give you a bit of a foundation for that. If you are interested more in being an archaeological illustrator, getting experience on digital illustration programs, so like AutoCAD, ArcGIS, Photoshop, Illustrator, taking classes that will cover that would be a good idea. Any kind of computer science course would be helpful, especially if it covers things like the Microsoft Office, because obviously you're going to be using a lot of Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. If you have any classes that cover statistics, getting an introduction to that would probably be helpful, but don't do it if you're going to be really bad at statistics and you don't like math like myself. If you're interested in that side of it, then take that course. When you're picking the kind of things that you're going to be taking at a high school level, you should really be thinking about things that you like, and while obviously you should be thinking about what is going to help you get into a university program, I think the focus should be more on making sure that you're taking classes where you can get good grades, rather than taking classes that you think are necessarily but you're not going to do well in, because you're getting judged the majority of the time off of your grades and not the title and content of the course that you're taking. You should also be thinking about what it is that you want to do with your archaeology degree. Do you want to become a professional archaeologist like myself, working in the private sector? Do you want to become a curator? Do you want to become a teacher? Do you want to pursue academia and become a professor and get a PhD, become a writer? Because all of those things are going to shape where you want to go to university, what kind of programs you're going to be picking, and what kind of things you're going to have to do to get into that particular university. You should be looking at the universities that you're interested in going in, looking at what their application requirements are, going to the open days, contacting them, talking to them, and figuring out this information, because unfortunately, as much as I would like to, I cannot specifically tell you how to get into any particular university. I can't even tell you which university is best, because you need to be picking what's best for you. I'll also say, just as a last note, that obviously some jobs care a lot more about what universities you went to than others. If you are applying for postdocs or academic jobs or for further degrees, more weight might be placed on what university you went to already. However, in the world of professional or commercial archaeology, in my experience, they don't make hiring decisions based upon university programs. So if a manager has two CVs in front of them and the two people went to two different schools, perhaps one person went to a lesser ranked school but they have a driving license, and the other person went to a higher ranked school but doesn't have a driver's license, they'd actually probably go with the person with the driver's license, because that's in some ways more desirable. You have a degree, they don't necessarily care where it's from, at least in my experience. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. That's it for me today, guys. I hope that this has been informative and at least answered some of your questions about what you should be doing to prepare to go to university and study archaeology. If you're thinking of doing that, good luck with your process. I hope that you do well, you get into the schools that you want, and you have a great time there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put them in the comments below. I do make an effort to try and answer as many of them as I can. If you liked this video and it was helpful for you, please give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see anything else from me, please check out the rest of my channel, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you know whenever I put a video up. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye!